Welcome to HCA Talks Health. I'm Zina LaRue, and with me is someone many of you may know quite well. She's one of the senior members of the HCA team, Lyn Hatch. So Lyn is the head of student experience here at HCA, and she's also a UK health coach with her own continued practice. And she has a corporate background of about 20 years. But in 2018, she decided to move into an area that she felt really passionate about, and that's health and well-being. So welcome, Lyn. I'm so glad that you're joining us today.
Thanks, Zina. Lovely to see you.
So I want to start with your own journey, your own story. So in the introduction, our listeners found out that you were for 20 years, you were working in a corporate environment. But tell us more about that. What was your background exactly before becoming a health coach, and what career were you pursuing?
So I did a language degree, and my circumstances with my husband carrying on studying meant I was kind of forced to stay where I am up in the northeast of England. And so my choices were somewhat restricted, and I kind of fell into the manufacturing sector, specifically into the chemical industry, and ended up, as you say, there for nearly 20 years in various commercial roles, using those languages that I'd studied. And I think what happens is you get into that really comfortable place. But I think deep down, I knew it wasn't quite right for me long term, but I didn't have a clue what direction to take at all.
So in 2018, obviously you decided you just needed to make a change, or what did the transition look like?
Yeah, so a few years before that, so 2013, my mum had been diagnosed with a type of cancer called myeloma, which is like a bone marrow cancer, quite a silent one, quite hard to detect. And she was given a 5-year life expectancy. So I became very heavily involved in her care, 200 miles away, juggling my own family at the time. And then she spent her final few days in a most incredible hospice. And it was while I was there, and my brother just looked at me the one day and said, you'd be really good at this. And it's like it planted a little seed that I just couldn't kind of unsee then. And a few months later, I just went into work one day after my husband's agreement and just said, look, I need to go and work in palliative care. I'm going to give you 6 months notice. And that really was kind of, that first step. So I was very fortunate then to find work in a local hospice to me. And then my eyes just began to open really as like, wow, I probably should always have been in this sector. And then think, okay, so how can I make an even bigger impact? Because I loved working with the patients and their families, and then started to look at options.
Oh, okay. And then where did health coaching come in? So obviously we're interested in the health industry, but what about health coaching?
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of our students and grads, you've got this real passion for health and wellness. I'd listened to lots of podcasts and read lots of books and things, but you don't always know that there's a role out there called health coaching. So I looked at nursing initially, I looked at nutritional therapy, I looked at becoming a personal trainer, and then came across health coaching and thought that ticks all the boxes. So kind of did that training whilst I was working at the hospice, set up my own health coaching practice. And over time, that started to really take off. And I found myself, as many of us busy women do, juggling even more balls and being busier than ever. And I thought, this is not what I signed up for. So with sadness, I kind of stepped away from that hospice and I just fundraised for them now, and just went all in really on my own health coaching practice.
And what is the type of work that you do as a health coach today? So what is the different types of, obviously you work one-on-one with clients, and what else?
Yeah, so one-to-one, I think initially was a really big chunk of my business. And then I was asked to run some group coaching programs with a nutritional therapist. So I dived into that. It was lovely to have somebody to work alongside. That gave really good experience, and it extends your reach, obviously, when you're doing group coaching as well. And then, it's been really nice for me to go back and do corporate wellbeing work, but on my own terms, and going in with understanding the challenges that people face when they're working in really busy, stressful environments. And that corporate work looks like a few different things, actually, Zina. So that is sometimes one-to-one. So, for example, next week I've got a half day on a regular client site working one-to-one. It can be going in running workshops. It can be half day senior management training. It can be writing content for them. Really varied.
And how did you make that initial contact with these companies? Did you just reach out to them, or how did it happen?
So there's obviously different ways that you can build your health coaching practice. A lot of people immediately think, oh, social media is the only way, and
Mm.
panic at that. And I've used that very, very little. So I went completely deep on networking. I went to
Oh.
every networking event possible that was in my local area. I even set up my own one actually during COVID, because when you're a health coach, you want really trusted, partners to refer your
Mm.
clients onto, because they often
Mm.
present with different needs. So in that group, we had physios, we had Pilates, yoga instructors, we had audiologists, we had a doctor, and it was
Mm.
great. And we used to meet monthly and have a guest speaker. And so, yeah, I think if there isn't a network, create one, absolutely. But a big part for me is a particular franchise networking group called BNI, which exists globally. It's not cheap, but it works incredibly effectively because you meet week in, week out. You have to bring referrals. There's a lot of accountability. And I think that
Mm.
gave me the real boost with my business.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I also realized the amount of people that I knew already. They say that, averagely each of us knows about 1,000 people. So I started to map out all of my different networks and really kind of lean into those.
That's good. So the opportunities really are everywhere. You just need to participate and you need to keep your eyes open to where a potential collaborator or potential partner could be. So I understand that you enjoy the work with the corporate companies, but do you, besides that, also have a specific niche or a type of client that you particularly enjoy working with?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been really broad. It's not what I thought. My very, very first client, who I still am in touch with now, and I think, kind of hugely fond of him, was a type 2 diabetic. And I really thought that was the path that I would go down. I started to look at more training in that. But somehow it emerged that a lot of my clients had experienced trauma. So I did more training as a trauma-informed coach, including sort of somatic trauma release. And then my brother's own diagnosis, age 50, with autism and ADHD, I think really led me to want to work more in that area as well. And I was also finding a lot of my clients were late diagnosed neurodivergent and needed support. So those really are the two areas I've ended up focusing just almost accidentally.
Yeah, it's interesting and it's quite broad, right? So it's not necessarily linked in any way, but it's areas that you're really interested in and want to support people to improve their health.
Yeah.
So just thinking about health coaching, obviously it's a immensely satisfying job to work as a health coach, right? Because we support people to transform their health and to experience a good quality of life again. But beyond those professional benefits, how do you find health coaching impacted you, like your personal life and your family and your lifestyle?
Yeah, massively, because you can't unsee all of this stuff that you learn. And,
Mm.
growing up, I saw my mum really struggle with her weight all of her life. So
Mm.
that was a big sort of, thing always in my mind. I was not good at sport at school. I was
Mm.
quite a yo-yo exerciser. I would be overweight at periods in my life, myself and my husband. And then I finally found running as something, and that seemed to unlock, for me. And then, anybody who's on my Instagram will see that I'm in the mountains most weekends. We're quite a fit, active family now. So I think understanding, kind of the impact of movement, just, rather than exercise as well, has been huge. But then I significantly changed our food environment as a household. And I was really like public enemy number one for a long time. And I've got two teenage boys, so you can imagine taking all the sugar out and breakfast
Mm.
and all
Oh
that was not
gosh.
popular. Yeah. But now both they and my husband on a regular basis really thank me and acknowledge, that the impact that those changes have had. They notice how they feel. For example, if we go out for a meal and there's not a lot of choice and they end up having a lot of carbs and their blood sugar goes out of balance, they feel it and
Yeah.
comment on it. And that, that
Yeah.
kind of lethargy in the afternoons, there's none of that in the house anymore. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I think, and then also just through having these skills, you can coach yourself. If you're not doing something that you want to do, you're like, okay, what's going on for me? What are my barriers? What's my
Mm.
first small step? What accountability do I need? So it's just it's transformational, really. And I love it because my husband has to go through my office sometimes to get to his. So he's picked up over the years on all these things that I'm asking his coaching questions, and he's now using them with his team at work, and
Oh,
it makes me
really?
chuckle, but it's great. It's
Oh, I
great to
love it. That's so good. But I really agree. I find that that is really one of the best ways to learn is to, like you said, your family, they experience it for themselves. If their blood sugar is not balanced, then they can feel it. I don't want to feel like this. So let's make a change and understand the importance of the changes that they've made. And thinking about, how does the corporate environment differ from your work as a health coach? So do you find that it fits better into your life compared to when you had to work in a corporate environment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive benefit. And I know that's why a lot of people kind of go to health coaching, isn't it? Not just because they're passionate, but actually it's going to offer more flexibility
Yeah.
and a more balance in their life. So
Yes.
for me as a mum, I always wanted to be around for my children at, kind of the bookends of the day. And I just couldn't do that. I was out of the door 6:45 in the morning, getting in at 6:30 at night. And that was hard. I was abroad a lot with my job. I was always, even if I was here, I was not really present. I was always on email. And the kind of the final straw for me actually in leaving my corporate job was that my boss was messaging me while my mum was dying, asking for an update. And I ended up being back at work 2 days after she died because of the pressure I was under. And I know that that's not unusual, unfortunately, still in a lot of companies.
So that's a huge part to be able to find your own, a way of living that also gives you freedom and flexibility to be there for the people around you, to show up for the people that you love, in a more present way. And I think that's exactly what health coaching gave you access to. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
So,
nothing more rewarding, like you say, Zena, earlier, it doesn't feel like work. And that's the different thing. When a lot of people have that sick feeling on a Sunday night, no more of that. I
no.
literally spring out of bed every morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another role that you have is, of course, your role at HCA. So how does that complement your work as a health coach and everything else you're doing?
Yeah, well, I want to say perhaps the only drawback to health coaching is it can be a little bit lonely if you're
Yeah.
working, on your own. And I'm on the far spectrum of extrovert.
Mm,
And quite quickly, when I left the hospice, having spent 20 years in, team environments, I thought, don't know whether I can do this.
mm,
And so when a job advert appeared for HCA, I thought, I'll just put my hat in the ring, see what happens. And it's just amazing. So not only are we an incredible team of 40-odd women at HCA, doing really impactful work, but the reach that I can now have personally as well. So if I do one-to-ones, it's limited. Even my group coaching or corporate work is limited, but now we're training people and think of the ripple effect, of the lives that they will impact. I think we did a calculation at our recent 3-day live event in Johannesburg with all our students. If each one of them worked with, say, 50 to 100 people, multiply that out, it's massive.
it
And
is.
then, every person who changes and receives health coaching, they have a ripple effect because, they look better, feel better, relationships change, and people are impacted by that around them, not just at home, but at work. So, I mean, it's just wonderful. You can hear I'm so passionate about this.
And it's true, it's that exponential impact that we could have compared to, working one-on-one or now and then in a group format. It's a different level, right? So I have to ask you, Lynn, of course you've got a lot of different things on your plate, right? So how do you avoid spreading yourself too thin?
Um, it's not easy, I think, as somebody who's been driven, and I actually grew up in a
Mm,
family business which works 7 days a week as well. So I think that's in my DNA, and I have to actively guard against that.
mm,
For me, morning routine is really important. So I have a workout that I do live every morning online. I try and get out. I live in a beautiful village with lots of greenery and scenery around me. So that's really important to me. I've tried, kind of training in mindfulness. I do struggle still with that, if I'm honest.
mm,
But I think what I have real awareness of is because I've been to quite a bad place after my mum died and almost having a breakdown. I will never allow myself to go back to that. So I think
mm,
I recognize any signs of overwhelm and
mm,
stress and that very early, and then go, right,
mm.
again, using those self-coaching skills, what do I need to do?
Yeah, that's good. And to check in with yourself every now and then and listening to the signs and responding to those signs.
Yeah.
So I know that in practice as a health coach that supervision also plays quite an important role. And sometimes that's also a way to check, am I still in the right place? Am I doing what I should? Am I not spreading myself too thin? So tell me about what role supervision plays in your life and in your practice and how it supports you as well.
Well, funnily enough, straight after we record this, I've actually got my supervision session.
Oh,
So
good.
I think as health coaches, we kind of carry a lot. It can be quite heavy sometimes. We're looking at,
Mm,
kind of deep limiting beliefs with people. And because of the work I do, particularly around sort of the trauma-informed and neurodivergent, again, so a lot of stuff comes up. And vicarious trauma is really real, that we
mm,
absorb and absorb, and if we're not careful. So going back to all those well-being practices you mentioned, you can start to kind of feel yourself go down. And I got to one point, I think a couple of years ago, where I noticed it. And yeah, I mean, I'd already having supervision, but I just increased the frequency. So now it's every sort of 4 to 6 weeks for me. And I'm actually also training to be a supervisor, which has given a different perspective.
mm,
But yeah, you're right. There's different elements. We call it sort of formative, normative, and restorative. So
mm,
sometimes I'll go along, and actually there's a particular point where I was really carrying a lot. We were about to head to one of our London HCA live events, and my shoulders must have been up here, and I was breathless. And my supervisor knew me well enough to comment on that and say, "Let's just start with a grounding practice, Lyn, because there's a lot going on." And it's a place to offload a little bit
mm,
safely,
mm,
to reflect, because I'm not always great at doing that on my own, to ask questions of somebody who's more experienced, to even look at your professional practice. Is it going where you want, to bring client case
mm,
studies and say, did I handle that in the right way?
mm,
Safeguarding concerns.
mm,
So it's just invaluable. Yeah.
mm. And I guess it plays a very important role in any health coach's practice, having that check in every now and then to keep you accountable, to also build your own practice, but yeah, probably also discussing clients from time to time, right? Difficult clients that you need some support with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's actually going to be a requirement from 2026
I
of the
heard.
UK International Health Coaches Association to have, I think it's 4 supervision sessions at least per year.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier limiting beliefs, and it got me thinking how limiting beliefs, of course, is something that often comes in the way in our own and our clients' health journeys. But also, what role do you think it plays when people want to get out there and start a business as a health coach? What role does maybe even self-doubt and limiting beliefs play when people want to make a transition from corporate into working as a health coach full time?
Yeah, I think it's something that comes up really commonly. It can be hard to sell yourself suddenly and to put the value on that. I think that's one of the key things that we see in our grads.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's useful to reframe it though. So people are
Mhm.
struggling, and I'm just thinking of a recent client of mine who's sort of late 30s, and she had basically got to a place of accepting of no energy, tired all the time, and just thought, oh, it's my age. I can't expect, late 30s to be able to do what I used to do. And I was like, no way. you know, when I go into corporates as well, and I say, well, like, put your hand up if you wake up feeling refreshed in the morning. Really, barely a hand goes up,
Oh
maybe
no.
two in a room of maybe 40 or 50. And it's people are surviving, they're not thriving. So you as a health coach have the solution. People have got the problems. So it's a match made in heaven. And it's a
Mm,
disservice, really, isn't it? If you think about it, not to put yourself out there. And
mm.
somebody once said to me, if you don't market yourself, that the health coaching exists, that you are there, then it's incredibly selfish. And that was a real game changer for me.
You have the solution. You can help people transform their health. You need to get out there. Yeah, exactly. So thinking about building your business, you've talked about quite a few different things. I think networking was really key for you in building your practice, but also, I guess, reframing limiting beliefs. Is there
Yeah.
anything else, any other tips that you maybe want to share with our listeners today in terms of how you built your business to where it is today?
Well, I know you do amazing talks on this, Zena, but collaboration,
Mm,
referral partners are a huge
mm,
part. So I
mm,
don't really put myself out there now. It all just comes organically. So having
mm.
a really good business executive coach who refers their clients onwards, maybe local physios or doctors, things like that. So I think that's really helpful. And then you can refer, as I say, backwards and forwards.
Yeah, exactly. And it should be a win-win situation, right? Where you also refer back to them and you support them in ways that they might need. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so thank you, Lyn. So any final thoughts that you maybe want to, or key takeaways that you maybe want to leave our listeners with today?
Well, you said something which I thought was really key. Look for opportunities, they're everywhere. So, there's this reticular activating system in our brain. Like when you buy a car, you suddenly see loads of those cars everywhere. And I think
Yes.
get that switched on about health coaching opportunities. Look at the notice boards in your local
Mhm.
supermarket. I still chuckle. One of our students was stopped by somebody in the toilet at one of our live events and said, "Are you with those health coaching people? Because I think I need a health coach." And she got a client from it. And another of our
Really?
colleagues, yeah, was stopped by the police recently, and she ended up converting them into a client. So opportunities are literally
That's
everywhere.
fantastic. I love that. That's a great story. Yeah, we just need to step out of our own way, right? And know that opportunities are everywhere, and recognize that real need for what we do, the real need that is out there. And something you've also shared today is that health coaching isn't just about helping clients. Yes, of course, that's a very important part, but it's also a career that allows you to to build a life that also aligns with your own health and your own happiness. So yes, it's about making a meaningful impact, but also creating a lifestyle that truly works for you. And at the end of the day, puts a smile on your face, right? And that's important. So thank you, Lyn. It's been such a pleasure having you with us today, and thank you for sharing your insights.
No, it's a joy as always to see you. Thank you, Zena.
If you have a passion for health and wellness and you would like to make a difference in the lives of others and discover a new rewarding career in health and well-being coaching, visit www.healthcoachesacademy.com to find out more.